Baldur's Gate 3 came out very recently, and I've got to say, I have been loving it. It is the only video game I've played that has come this close to being a true Dungeons & Dragons experience. They nailed it. I mean, sure, you can technically romance a druid who then shapeshifts into a bear, and yes, that is just bestiality with a few extra steps, but I can confidently say, while that's not the way that I play Dungeons & Dragons, that is 100% part of the D&D experience, and I, for one, applaud Larian Studios for their boldness. Good job, you sick, wonderful, horrible, twisted, magnificent people. Thank you, I love you, and may God have mercy upon your souls. But while playing this game, I did start to think, where did Baldur's Gate get its name? I mean, it sounds very similar to the Norse god, Baldur. Did it come from there? Okay, I'm gonna cut the big dramatic reveal. Yes, Baldur's Gate got its name from Baldur. And yes, I know the canon accurate in-universe lore, I understand that. But it's wrong. It is wrong. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna show you why it's wrong. Because it doesn't make any sense. Because it doesn't make any sense. Because it doesn't make any sense. Okay? So journey with me as I show you how the lore of Baldur's Gate was actually built to compensate for the fact that Baldur's Gate is named after the Norse god Baldur. A lot of retconning happened, guys. Also, before I launch into it, I would like to point out that I'm going to be focusing on what we know through the Forgotten Realms pamphlets and campaigns and whatnot. I'm not going to dive into the video game itself, so don't worry about any spoilers. I'm going to do my best to navigate around any spoilers for Baldur's Gate 3 or any of the Baldur's Gate franchise. Anyway, moving on. First, let's talk about the in-universe explanation of the naming of Baldur's Gate. The man himself, Balduran. Balduran was an adventurer, much like you. However, he did not probably take an arrow to the knee. I can't confirm. There's no indication of whether or not he did, but since he walked normally, it would suggest that no arrows came close to the knee region.
I used to be an adventurer like you, and I took an arrow in the knee.
His most famed expedition was when he sailed past Evermeet into the rich isles of Enkarome. And when he did that, he made himself the first inhabitant of Faerun to do so. Now, I should probably back up here and explain a few things about Enkarome and Faerun and all that. So, Faerun and Enkarome are both continents within the world of Toril. Faerun is the key setting of the Forgotten Realm, and there is more information and material about Faerun than any other region. So, as I was saying, Balduran adventured into Enkarome, and when he came back from his expedition, let me tell you, he had more than just stories and tales of strange things to share. And don't get me wrong, he had plenty of those, but he also came back with boundless riches. Okay, not boundless, as many riches as he could fit on his ship. Using the booty he had acquired, he was able to help the harbor city that he sailed off from, at that point known as Grey Harbor, by building walls and defenses to enclose the city and protect it from invading orcs and barbarians, which were kind of a menace during that time. Then, like the legend he is, he sailed off again into his vessel, known as the Wandering Eye, back to the lands and inhabitants of Enkarome, never to be heard from again. Which is all right and good. It would make sense that the city would be named after him, right? I mean, he poured money and resources into that city, and then also he left like a freaking myth and legend. It makes sense they would name a city after him, right? Well, based on the name of the city, no, it doesn't make any sense, okay? Look here. I'm burping. Look here. Okay, so why, if his name is Balduran, would they name the city Baldur's Gate, huh? And don't give me the, it changes name throughout the years malarkey, because that doesn't make sense, okay? Let me explain why. First of all, it takes a long time for a city to get its name changed that drastically. A common comparison people use is, London used to be called Lindonium. Yes, okay, that is true. During the time that Londinium was part of the Roman Empire, it was called Londinium. Londinium was founded between 45 to 50 AD. Its name was historically Londinium until after the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century, aka about 500 years later. One of the reasons the name changed was because a lot of the people of Londinium had fled the city, and then they came back because, hey, the city has walls to protect us and the Vikings are scary. That point, it became London. Okay, again, I like to reiterate, 500 years. In contrast, Baldur's Gate's name, according to the Baldur's Gate Gazetteer, sprung up only a generation after Balduran had left. Now, for those of you who don't know, a generation is generally between 20 to 30 years. Now, obviously, that's a significantly different time, 500 to 30 years max. But okay, let's forget that. Let's forget the whole time thing. Sure, whatever. Okay, maybe people just wanted to shorten it because it was just easier to say Baldur's Gate instead of Balduran's Gate, but that still doesn't make any sense. Within the city itself, at least within the boundaries of the city, I believe it's technically on the outside, on like the coast, but still within the city boundaries itself, you have a tower also named after Balduran called Sea Tower of Balduran. And that's not to mention Balduran's Bay and Anchorome itself. So if these locations could allot the syllables it takes to not change Balduran's name, then why did Baldur's Gate need to get shortened? Did people just not respect their founder? No, that can't be it either, because the people of Baldur's Gate call themselves Baldarians, because if they called themselves Baldurans, it would be disrespecting their founder's name, who is Balduran. Literally, that is part of their culture. It would be disrespectful. But apparently, the gate that he founded, that they call it, that's not disrespectful somehow, by shortening his name. So what happened? Why is it called Baldur's Gate? I'll tell you what happened. Canon. When the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons came out, and the Forgotten Realms started to get created, Ed Greenwood, what a man. What an absolute Canadian treasure, made a lot of lore for this world. Now, it wasn't as fleshed out as it was when, second edition came out, but when they started, they made a lot, including a reference to Baldur's Gate. Now, it wasn't a lot, it wasn't nearly as much as we have now, but they made a city called Baldur's Gate that was important to the world at the time. It was a big harbor city, and a lot of people knew about it. But in the second edition and on, things started to get a little wild. They introduced a huge collection of planes, realms, universes, basically, that were all considered canon. You have the material plane, you have the astral plane, you have the ethereal plane, you have a lot of different planes. There are also multiple versions of the same planes. The material planes basically meaning that it's a plane that humans are used to and thrive in. But yeah, there's not just one material plane. So the world that we've been talking about, as I mentioned earlier, Toril, that takes place in what is called the prime material plane. It's not the only world that exists within this material plane. There are other worlds that exist, but it's the world we spend the most time in during the Forgotten Realms campaigns. The Terran material plane holds Earth. Yup. Earth. Plain vanilla Earth. Canonically, Earth exists in the Forgotten Realms mythology. And yes, it is in fact canon, because the treasure, the legend himself, and Greenwood wrote himself into the canon of D&D. In the Grand History of the Realms, it says, on an alternate material plane world known as Earth, Ed of the Greenwood assembles various travelogues, maps, and other works from Elminster of Shadowdale into the first publication of the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. Basically, yeah, Earth is a canon event. Okay, so sure, that's cool. That's a cool fact. Why is it important to the naming of Baldur's Gate? Well, you might remember that historically speaking, Baldur, who I'm saying the city is named after, is part of the Norse pantheon. There might be a few issues naming a city after a god from the Norse pantheon. First and foremost, the Norse pantheon was a little busy during the time of the naming of Baldur's Gate, doing a lot of things on Earth, and also in a lot of other realms as well. I mean, they have their own whole collection of realms. They were a little busy. You know, they were a little busy. But more importantly, Baldur was extra preoccupied during the time of the naming of Baldur's Gate because he was a little dead. He was in Helheim, you know. Oh no, that's a problem because we named the city vaguely after Baldur. So how do we rectify this? How do we explain it? Well, their solution was coming up with a character named after their city, but not named enough to confuse him with the Norse god. They had to change it a little bit and then make that character not only super awesome, but also vital to not only the mythology of the city itself, but the mythology of the entire world. And that mythology of this Balduran character only continues to get more and more spicy. So there you have it. This is my video telling you why Baldur's Gate is not named after Balduran, but in fact, the reverse. Balduran is named after Baldur's Gate. I know I didn't get to talk too much about real-world lore in this video, but worry not, because there is a treasure trove of really fascinating characters that I can talk about, not only just from Baldur's Gate 3, but also the entire game franchise. I'm gonna be doing some videos about, and I might even just do a video about Baldur himself, even though he's not referenced in the games, at least I don't believe. He's still cool, and I like him. So please stay tuned for more videos to come, and also let me know what other topics, characters, creatures, and races you'd like me to cover and talk about, because I am always looking for new and fun things to research. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.